July 13th, 2020 City Council work session. Thank you for joining us in this remote meeting format we're using in response to Governor Brown's Stay Home, Save Lives order. This format enables the City Council to meet and take care of business while keeping its members, staff, and the public safe. For work sessions like this one, where there is no opportunity for public comment, those wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by calling in to one of the phone numbers listed for this meeting on the public webcasts and meeting materials webpage. Looking ahead, tonight's regular meeting will include a public forum and several action items. Information about how to participate in this meeting is available on the public webcast and meeting materials webpage. And as always, other avenues of communication with me and city councilors are available and open to you. So thank you again for joining us. And with that, we will begin our first item of business, which is local option levy. And I will turn it over to the manager.
Thank you, Mayor. It's good to see you all on Monday, and looking forward to both of these conversations tonight. And I'm just going to let Will O'Hearn, our library director, kick right in.
Thanks. Got my screen up there just a little bit early. Thanks for that. Can you hear me okay and everything? Excellent. Welcome to the Eugene Library Levy Renewal Option presentation. On June 10th, 2020, we reviewed 3 options for the library levy renewal. Based on the feedback and conversation, we are presenting option 1, maintain, and option 2, maintain and recover, with greater detail and examples. We have covered some of the information in our last work session and refined it for you today. The library plays a vital role in our community during more normal times. The situation we find ourselves is anything but ordinary. As we move forward, we'll be considering ways to continue evolving all of our library's resources, as we know there are going to be some critical decisions ahead and difficult times as our community recovers from the effects of the pandemic. The library can genuinely be an agent of recovery. Library use traditionally goes up during challenging times. People need to lean harder upon free resources in their journey back to some semblance of normal. The library is instrumental in strengthening our community recovery. As an overview of the current levy, to see where we're at right now, our current tax levy rate is 0.17, meaning for every $1,000 of property value, a house pays 17 cents of tax per year. The average tax rate per home, not per individual, but per home per year, is $36. The levy total is $2.7 million, just for a broad overview of what we're currently doing, so you know how to compare and contrast going forward. Here you can see the figures for the current levy and the 2 options being discussed tonight. The difference between the current levy and the maintain and recover option, option 2, is an additional $6 per year per household. Over the 5 years, this translates to $30 per household, which is approximately the cost of 1 hardcover book. If you compare the purchase price of such a book with what the library, as an agent of recovery, can provide, the community investment becomes more meaningful. Our first option is maintaining. Compared to the previous levy's numbers, it's $2.85 million per year with a tax rate of $37 per home per year. Again, per individual, not per individual, but per household per year. If you take a look at the left side of the slide, you can see that the tax rate has actually gone down from 0.17 to 0.15, meaning that it's actually 2 cents less than before per $1,000 of property value. For option 1, maintain, this would, in effect, mean that the library would be able to maintain the strides made from the current levy funding, including the additional 47 hours per week of open library access at our 2 branches and downtown location, for our community to be able to get an opportunity to equitable and inclusive information access, maker services, which will allow folks to have access to technology and experiential learning opportunities that they wouldn't be able to have without our library. Our maker van, where we're able to get out in the community, share maker material, outreach, and so much more. It would also allow the library to continue the free enriching program for everyone in the community, such as Lasers in the Library, First Friday performances, author talks, sensory story time, just to name a few. And we'd also be able to continue on with our early literacy efforts and support for vulnerable youth. We'd be able to maintain assistance for community members with employment resources, retraining, job skills, including partnering with Lane Workforce. We could also keep offering high quality, free information, resources, and instructions, which is not only crucial for health-related information around the pandemic, but is essential for lifelong education and self-improvement. Other benefits for our community would include more popular materials for shorter waiting times, mobile internet access for the youth in our community to help support student success via hotspots, and upkeep for circulating internet-ready devices at our branch locations. In short, option one would allow us to maintain the high level of services and resources our community comes to expect from our library. As we compare the two options' financial impact, the tax rate for the option two would be 0.17, which is the tax rate of the current levy. If you take a look at the left side of this slide, you can see that this option would maintain the current tax rate of 0.17, as well as allowing us to expedite our community's recovery. This works out to $42 per home per year for a total of $3.18 million per year. Option two, maintain and recover, will include everything from option one and then build upon what the library will need to do in order to be a stronger agent of recovery for our community. This option would help our library pivot more effectively during these times to meet the changing needs of our community. For instance, we will be able to provide more potential service opportunities, including a book bike, enhanced services for our maker van, and utilizing outreach to help meet people where they're at. We could strategically set up mobile service to provide internet access service points locations throughout Eugene to create more equitable internet access for those in need. The internet before was helpful to have. Now internet access is essential and becoming even more critical going forward. These service points will in turn increase our ability to support underserved populations, particularly around employment, technology, personal skills, as well as social connectivity. The library would also be able to enhance offsite programs and outreach with various community partners, particularly those of value to the unsheltered in our community, as they could continue with their recovery in this time as well. The library could strengthen partnerships with area schools, develop programs with an emphasis on re-entering the workforce, and create virtual programming for physically and socially isolated community members. Amplifying minority and underrepresented voices could be achieved by acquiring more materials and more diverse resources for all in our community to learn from and appreciate. This is particularly critical during this time as our society is not only recovering from COVID, but also looking into remedy social injustice and support and sharing a world of viewpoints. In other words, this option will maintain the high level of service the community comes to expect from our library and greatly expedite and empower our community's recovery. We know that the faster our library can pivot, the quicker and easier our community's recovery will be. This next slide features a quick comparison view of these two options. With option one, you would get 47 hours of additional access, maker van outreach, hotspot circulation, shorter wait times, and enhanced maker services. In addition to those, with option two, maintain and recover, you would get all those things. In addition to that, increased outreach in a book bike, internet-ready devices with hotspots, enhanced offsite programs, increasing underrepresented voices, and online programs for isolated individuals. While it's impactful and critical to see how these options stack up in terms of services and resources offered, feeling the impact of various options may be best illustrated by taking a journey with a family of three to see how this could potentially impact households in our community. Alex, a 36-year-old recently unemployed food service worker, Chris, an 11-year-old attending public school, and Jordan, a 3-year-old. This family's journey can go down 3 different paths at this juncture, with significantly different outcomes, all depending on the library levy. First of all, if the levy is not renewed, what impact would that have for these three? Alex will have more limited resources for re-entering the workforce, such as brushing up on a resume, learning new job skills, or consulting with Lane Workforce. Chris may not be able to access remote learning at school due to a lack of internet access. Jordan's literacy level could be impacted long-term due to a lack of reading material and educational resources. All three individuals would certainly have fewer opportunities for education, entertainment, and self-improvement. The results of this lack of opportunities could have long-reaching consequences. If the economic hardship continues, the family may be forced to find different living conditions, perhaps moving in with friends and family, or even living in their car. As libraries have proven time and time again, they can make a real impact on people's lives, particularly in difficult times when folks need more support. With option one, things will certainly be looking brighter for this family. Alex will have additional critical resources available in order to find employment. As they continue on their journey through recovery, hotspots will allow Chris to attend school with more success. The children can avail themselves of virtual platforms for both education and entertainment, thus allowing a single parent to provide opportunities for their children to have the same resources others have and create a level playing field. Little Jordan can attend virtual library story times with its positive impact on early literacy development. The overall effect of the library's impact would be give this family improved lives all around and a better chance to succeed and recover in Eugene. Option 2 will mean even more of an improvement for our family. With additional resources, Alex has an opportunity to not only become employed once more, but also to work on skills development, to get a job with increased pay and better benefits in order to provide for their family. Chris can have access to both a hotspot and a device for schoolwork instead of sharing Alex's smartphone to complete schoolwork. Eliminating obstacles for student success can make a world of difference for children. With additional mobile outreach opportunities, Jordan could be getting regular in-person story times as well as plenty of books delivered directly by recurring book bike visits. These become a highlight of the family's week, particularly Jordan, who creates a stronger connection with Alex as they bond over goodnight stories nightly. In addition, the library's platform for amplifying different voices in the community will encourage conversations among these family members about racial inequality and open up a world of viewpoints. With the library's assistance, this family has more potential to survive in Eugene and perhaps even thrive. Never underestimate the power and impact of public libraries. These two options come with accountability and transparency. That's something we're committed to. We will continue to review with our library advisory board, and all the funds will be put into a separate account so it's clear where everything we are spending goes and exactly to where we said it would go. Accountability will also include annual reports to City Council regarding levy spending and performance measures. We want to show that what we've promised is what we'll follow through on, and we will continue to be good stewards of our community support for us. In order to place the measure on the November 2020 ballot, the council must act by July 27th. If you choose to move forward with putting this ballot measure in November, we are scheduled already to be on the calendar on the 27th of July to discuss and finalize details of the resolution. To place the measure on the on the May 2021 ballot, the council must act by February 8th. In your packets, you can see what options to consider and the financial breakdowns of each option. This concludes the levy option presentation, and I would like to take any feedback and questions at this time.
Thank you so much, Will. That's a great presentation and a great reminder to us of how critical the library is, and especially at a time like this. So the floor is open for questions or comments. Anybody needing to comment on either of these options? Raising a hand. All right, I have Emily and then Jennifer. And Alan.
I was all ready to vote for the maintain because it doesn't seem like the right time to be increasing taxes. But I am swayed by the details of what we could offer people with a somewhat higher tax level, because I think it's true, as we face all this isolation, and I'm convinced phase one is coming back, it's really important to keep our brains engaged. And I'm always thinking, oh, I saw this person yesterday, and I didn't see anybody. It was just through Zoom. And so the opportunity for people who don't have regular council meetings to connect at hotspots and with computers, it's making me rethink this. And I'd be interested in knowing what other counselors think. Thanks.
Jennifer, and then Mike. Oh,
yeah, I had similar thoughts to Emily. If I ever need to get a budget approved, I'm going to hire Will to make my presentation. Will, can you remind me, you've been here, what, 2 years now?
About a year and a half, a little bit.
Year and a half, okay. So I thought your presentation was great, and I liked the use of following a family. I think that's that's a very creative way of explaining the services. For the option 2, I did have some concerns about how the things were laid out for this, because it feels like when I read this that all of the things for option 2 for hours and access, and then even some of the other things, all are getting at equity issues. And I find it somewhat problematic that if we've identified that we have these equity issues, that they're add-ons, right? That these aren't seen as important enough to get funded without having to ask for more money. And I do have some concerns about how we're doing that. And my assumption is that there are other things that are already being paid for. But I think that when you list it like this, it is somewhat, it makes it kind of look like, well, we're interested in getting underrepresented voices in our community, but only if we get extra money. So it's not our priority. It's an add-on priority. So I have concerns about how these were chosen to add on. And I would just encourage, like, you're in a good place because you're new and people expect you to come in and have new ideas and new ways of doing things, to just be open to looking at our budget and saying, you know, do we need to shift things around to be in a more equitable place? And then that's okay. That some things that we may have been spending money on for the last 10 or 15 years may not be our top priorities now, and we may need to shift some of that. But like Emily, I was also very much in favor of maintaining, and now I'm kind of interested to hear what other people say. I think you made a very good point for why these things are important.
Okay, we have Mike and then Claire.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Jennifer that the issues around equity are much more important than maker services or 3D printers. So, by golly, that should be an obvious issue that all of us can understand and be a part of. Will, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, because this isn't directed entirely at you, but it will be directed towards our manager. I've asked before, and certainly this is another case of, I really do wish that council would be presented with facts, pro and con, with regard to a decision, and allow us to do that rather than, hello? Allow us to come to a decision rather than get what I would call a heavy sales pitch. So that's pretty important to me. That was difficult.
Hang on, Mike. Greg, can you? There you go. Okay, sorry.
I was just going to say that was difficult for me, as it has been in other cases, because I would prefer.
No. I'm talking about this.
I think that's Greg. If we stop.
I'm sorry, but I am not, I have him muted and I cannot do any more actions for that. It's some other kind of glitch going on.
Right.
Huh.
Hopefully it stops.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. I prefer that we get factual stuff that we get to make decisions from, rather than a presentation that seems a little bit more like advocacy. So the other piece is that I'm challenged to consider a lot of this in isolation from other parts of the budget and other decisions with regard to budget. As I brought up when we had this conversation about the library levy before, it was very, very, very clearly presented previously, and I have the slides and the PowerPoint, when Connie presented it to us as additional services above and beyond, not makeup from the previous budget, but additional services above and beyond, like the 3D printer and the maker services, to enhance our library. Now, I can understand the desire and certainly the benefits to maintain something like that, even in this time. But budgets are going to be tight, and I don't think we should be making this decision in isolation from other budgetary decisions. So I'm conflicted with how we go forward with this. There's a part of me that wants to be in the maintain option one camp, but I'm struggling with that based on what else that costs people, when I think by December we're going to be living in an environment where an awful lot of people are losing their homes. So it's a struggle for me. So I'll be happy to hear more of what my colleagues think too.
Okay, Claire.
Thank you, Mayor. And I thought Alan wanted to be in the queue, but maybe.
Yeah, I put him back in. He dropped off, but he's back in behind you.
Oh,
Thanks.
gotcha. All right. Well, thank you, Will, for the presentation. And while I can totally understand Councillor Clark's critique, I also can appreciate why you would be a cheerleader for your program. So it was definitely not an unbiased presentation. And I also want to appreciate Jennifer's critique, just in terms of how we talk about equity. And I'm sure you didn't mean to frame it as something that's a nice to have, but that you see it as a core part of the job of delivering library services. So I would just take, so I agree with Jennifer's concern, and I would ask you to take that comment not necessarily as a reflection on this library levy question, but just as understanding that, you know, we do have a high expectation of how our library services are delivered, and that equity should be a core value in that service delivery, and would encourage you to think of ways as a service to reach out to the if you aren't already, to underserved parts of our community, to find out from them, how can we do better? How can we really bring this home for you? And then to the levy itself, I'm inclined to support option 2, and I appreciate you coming back to this work session with just the 2 options and having really listened to what, you know, we shared at the last work session on this, where we had 3 options. So I do appreciate you reflecting that conversation back in this presentation. And I think the piece, you know, if we are going to actually be able to enhance our people's connectivity through hotspots and mobile devices, and bringing things out to people more than expecting them to come to us, because that's just impractical right now, I think that's really important. And I agree with Councillor Clark that, you know, we are going to be facing some tough decisions, but I also believe that our community is more aware than ever before of how important it is for people to be able to connect online in order for their kids to go to school, in order for them to do a myriad of things they need to do to maintain their livelihood in their households. And we could, as a community, point fingers at other people, at the state, at internet service providers, at, you know, whoever, and say it's their responsibility to close the digital divide. But I think with this levy at option 2, we could actually start that work now here as a community, and all of us together pitch in to start to close that gap. So that's why I find supporting option 2 compelling for me. Thanks.
Alan.
Thank you, Mayor. I put a ditto after everything that Claire just said, and thank you, Jennifer, for framing that the issue so well. I'm in favor of keeping the rate the same at 0.17, option 2. The library really has shown it is an important and necessary and essential service during COVID-19 pandemic and the recession, and this is not the time to let library services lapse. If anything, they've shown their merit, and they need to be enhanced. So I think the existing and the enhanced services will become even more important as we move forward with COVID and into our recovery. So I like the accountability mechanism that's built into this, so that we can ensure that promises made, promises kept. And so I'm in favor of option 2 or motion 1B.
Okay, Chris.
Thank you. I really appreciate the comments that the other counselors have made to provide perspective. And I agree, equity and access to library services needs to be provided on a much more fair and equitable basis. When the staff brings to us a proposal that is to maintain the existing level of service, what it says is that's what they're doing. So to Jennifer's point, the equity conversation should have occurred in the previous levy discussion, so that we could have made sure that those equity considerations were considered back then. so that when we're presented with a maintained budget, it would have those in there. But since that's already happened and that's already taken place, I want to see equity elements. And since they're not technically part of a maintenance budget, they do need to be provided. And so that makes one reason why option 2 may be a little bit more desirable. But for me, the clincher, because I also was inclined to just go with the maintained budget, but the reason why I might support option 2, is for all the points that Jennifer made. If they weren't there before, it doesn't hurt to add them in now because they are important. And the second element is it maintains the same rate that it was already there, 0.17. So if we go to the public and say, the rate stays the same, what you've already been paying in terms of rate is going to be what you're paying now in terms of rate. We didn't increase that. And for me, that's a very persuasive argument. So in this case, I'm willing to support option 2 because the rate doesn't change and it gets us those equity elements, which will now become part of maintaining library services that we should have put in before, but we didn't.
Betty, have you raised a hand and I haven't seen it? Are you? Yes, go for it, Betty.
I don't know how to do this. Can you hear me now? I was for option 1 and I still am, but I think we want people to vote for this, I think. And people are getting tired of more taxes. And I think the library is one of the most equitable things we have already. The library and the post office are 2 things that are available to everybody. And regardless of their level of income. That's all. Bye.
I have a couple of counselors for a second round, but I do just want to jump in here because when you actually look at the list of the option 1 pieces, I mean, I guess I'll preface this. I hope you'll support option 2 because I think this is a time to invest. And I think everything we're hearing from the community about their desire for us to be putting tax dollars into upstream, how do we enable people to succeed in life? Everything we're hearing about this fits right here, and that the tax rate in option 2 stays the same as it has been all along. So it's not an increase for those particular property owners. But I also want to say to the equity piece that even in option 1, it was 22 hours a week to Bethel, which is an underserved area. It was refers specifically to vulnerable populations having access to the Maker Van. It refers specifically to literacy efforts, early learning efforts, providing vulnerable youth with additional support, developing skills for training. So I don't think that the equity issues have not been incorporated into the original levy that this would renew, but I think we see a need to enhance, particularly with regard to COVID and with what the community is asking us to do, which is to invest in our community. So I'm glad to hear that more of you are thinking about option 2. And with that, I have both Mike and Emily looking for a second round. So Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. Sarah, we have 27th of July as a deadline. When are we scheduled to make a decision on this?
It's I believe that we have that day scheduled. Will, do you have, I'm going to pull up the tentative agenda real quick. We placed a placeholder on Monday, July 27th.
Okay. So we have a couple of weeks here before we are asked to act on this choice. One of the things I would say is that although I think we're going to face comparatively much more difficult decisions, we make this decision in isolation, right? But the public doesn't see this sort of thing in isolation. The public makes the decision compared to other things the city spends money on and things that we do citywide. And so we're going to have other conversations between now and then about things we may very well cut, things that people will maybe consider a higher priority than some of these services, despite what we think. Because at the end, we have to ask the public to vote in November. And I think that come November, the world's going to look differently than it looks right now. And if we're asking for the same amount of tax rate, but an increase in money to do these other things, when some other programs or some other services that they value, we have perhaps had to cut or to curtail in some way, I think we won't have as strong a position with the voters as if we say, we're cutting this by 2 cents, you know, we're cutting the tax rate on this and providing the exact same services. I think that when in front of the voters in November presents a stronger case based on the things we don't know yet and the things we haven't made decisions on, and comparatively to other expenditures we may have to curtail in the city. So I offer that. Thanks.
Thank you. Emily?
Thank you. When the first levy came around, I was against it because I thought it should come from the general fund. And I still do, but we don't have it in the general fund. And obviously the general fund is going to be really stressed. So we're not going to get it out of there. We are going to have to do so many things for recovery. And that was one of the reasons I was interested in option one. But because this includes things for recovery, it may help us in ways that we don't seem so obvious right now. You know, resumes, being able to take classes online, just saying sane with movies and books. But I think there's a lot of benefits that will help us get through this isolation and everything, no matter how long it goes. But I do want to seem careful with the money. I want to be careful with the money. But this seems to have a lot of benefits outside of just going to the library. I don't mean just going to the library to read books. My other question is, if we go forward, do we care whether it's May or November? November will have a better turnout. We should have a voters pamphlet. Another advantage of November is if we do go to option two and it fails, we still have time to get option one onto a ballot for May, when we would have more information. So it's like, I'm like, well, maybe we should wait and do it in February when we know more about our money. But I think the benefits are going to be things that we weren't necessarily so attached to in the past, because we weren't needing to uplift our population as much as we're going to have to now. So again, I want to hear what everybody else thinks. Thanks.
Okay, Jennifer and then Claire.
Yeah, so Will, I had a question. Can you remind me what the total budget? So this is about 3 million, and what is the rest of the budget that you get?
It's about, what is it? Good question. Twyla, do you have that number off the top of your head? I don't have that one in particularly right off the top. If you could give me the exact numbers, I don't know if you have that, Twyla.
Let me look it up. I'll find out for you.
Got it.
I actually have that.
Great.
If you mind. This is Renee. It's about 15 million, Jennifer.
Great, thank you.
The total library budget.
Oh, my brain just died. There was a point for that. Sorry. So I assuming a lot of that 15 million goes to personnel. Do you know just off the top of your head how much of that is flexible? That's not payroll?
I thought about, and this is again, a big broad number here. I thought about 70% of the money that goes to the library is personnel oriented, is the salaries, things like that. That's a big, broad, sweeping number. I don't have the exact number in front.
Right. No, I appreciate that. That was kind of my question, is what you're dealing with as far as, like, it's not just, all your money is not coming from this levy. I think that's important to remember, where you're already making budgetary decisions and priority decisions on other money that's available to you that I assume has some ability to shift, considering that our environment has changed and that our customers, for lack of a better word, have different needs right now.
Yeah. What was the question again? Can you repeat that for me? Sorry.
It wasn't more. It was more of a statement than a question.
got it. I thought that
I
was
just
a
wanted
question.
to
Sorry.
kind of get the lay of the land of what you're dealing with.
Yep.
Claire.
Thanks. Yeah, so I would say we know people love our library and our branch libraries and the awesome services we've been able to provide. And we had some skepticism about whether the levy would pass the last time we put it out. And it passed with a strong level of support. And so I think even though people are and will continue to be worried about their personal financial well-being, I believe a majority of voters are going to recognize that this is an opportunity to support not only themselves personally with the access the library allows, but their neighbors. And I think there's a recognition that this is a shared burden for a shared and expansive benefit during a time of crisis and stress. And that the library and the services that house it provide, not only a practical place to go and, work on your resume and build your job skills, but a place of relief and brightness and fun and connecting with humans. And I mean, I really feel like people were going to support this levy. I think keeping it the same tax rate is a fine argument, and then saying, and we are going to be able to do more things that people need now than they've ever needed before. I really feel it's a strong case, and I feel like we'll be successful if we put it out at the current rate, which is option 2.
Okay, I see Betty waving her hand. Betty, go for it.
Just a question. Aren't some of the services you're talking about duplicating things that the Workforce Partnership does?
Yeah, we're actually looking to partner with WorkSource, so they would actually be able to work with us. Right now, they don't have a physical location, so we're actually talking about how we could potentially have them be in our building for at least a little bit here. So they're actually out of their building, and so we're trying to figure out ways to incorporate services like that. The library is truly a community problem solver. That's one of the big things we offer. And so we're looking to support them by actually looking to have them be able to actually have a physical location to meet with people at our facility, and looking to extend that more in the future. As we get to where we can do more programs, things like that on site, we're also particularly looking at programs and services and bringing their expertise in so they can help kind of be a one-stop shop where they can go look at, get resume help, get the items that they need, be able to take a program and even have help from those WorkSource individuals as well. So we really would be an instrumental part of the economic recovery in that way. And that's a big component of kind of what we want to do is help out with the economic recovery on both small businesses and those individuals who find themselves currently unemployed or underemployed. So by working with them, by having the physical location to come to, knowing that not everyone's able to go look for get that help they need online. Not everyone has the internet access. This would be a place where people could physically go and meet those individuals' needs where they're at.
Well, maybe things have changed. I was on their board for a couple of years, and they did have an office, and also they partnered with the employment department. And I went on a tour of the employment department. People were all over the place trying to help me in case I needed help with a resume. And it seemed to me that they had that pretty much under control at that time, but
at this point,
they're not now.
I'm sorry. They're actually out of their building because the unemployment claims are so much that they have no longer a space in which to physically meet.
Oh, thank you.
That's currently the situation we're at. So we're trying to help meet that need right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Emily.
Just quickly, the library is something that's familiar and things are rapidly going to change. So it's comforting, I think, even if you're not a patron, to know that it's still there. And of all the things we do, this is one of the most equitable. it's available for the homeless to the very richest, and even the very richest might want to access some of that online stuff. But it's only available and equitable if you can get access. So that pushes me towards number 2, because it will be more inclusive of our entire population. So yeah, I'm going for 2, and I'm ready to make a motion if we're ready for it.
Yeah, I think, any other comments? All right, why don't you go ahead and put a motion on the table?
I move to direct the city manager to return to council with a resolution referring to the November 3rd, 2020 ballot, a measure renewing the library level that maintains the existing library service level and adds services to assist the community in its long-term recovery efforts.
Do we have a second? Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
I don't know if Jennifer was trying to or not, but
it was on and off. I couldn't tell. All right. I know Mike wants to speak to this one more time. Go ahead, Mike.
Move to amend to option 1.
Do we have a second for that?
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. Just.
I'll speak to that if I can.
Okay, good. Go for it.
We have until the 27th to change our mind. And I thought, based on what I just asked Sarah, that we weren't scheduled to act on this, we're going to take the formal action. What we're asking tonight is to bring back that option, right? Right, Sarah?
Yeah,
For
I
the
think that's
27th?
my understanding. Can you clarify, Renee or Catherine, do you need to write the resolution between now and July 27th?
Yes. So based on the action taken tonight, we'll write the resolution and then it'll come back for discussion and action on the 27th. There's nothing scheduled in between now and the 27th.
Thank you very much. Even a few weeks can make a difference these days in what we know and what we don't know. So I suppose I'm going to amend not to just option 1, but to bring back both for our choice on the 27th.
Do you have a second on that? Bring back both?
Second.
Okay. So the motion on the table right now is a motion to substitute the primary motion with a motion that brings back both resolutions identified in option 1 and option 2.
Okay.
Correct.
This is a vote to substitute. So
Correct.
all in favor of substituting, bringing back both? All in favor? So 1.
I have a question.
Okay. Before we vote, go ahead, Emily.
If we decide to still look at both of them, is that enough time? And, can you write both of them for the 27th?
Yes, we will make sure to do that.
I mean, I hate to add more work, but I definitely want to at least maintain. Things could change in 2 weeks, but I think
absolutely
I want number 2.
We can absolutely bring back both resolutions and have them so you can look at them and decide on the 27th. We can certainly do that. So you would have in front of you the option that would just maintain it with a slightly less levy fee per household. And you would also have the option that was originally your motion on the table, which is the option 2. So you'll have both resolutions. If this motion to substitute passes, you'll have both resolutions in front of you on the 27th. And one of those 2 you can go forward for the resolution.
Yeah.
And that would give us a little more time for public input. Not much, but hurry up.
Okay, all in favor of the substitute motion? Please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, opposed? 1, 2, 3. All right, so it passes. So both will come back on July 27th.
So now what's on the table?
Oh, that's a substitution.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Now we have to vote for the actual one.
Now I have to vote in the actual one. All right.
We just voted
To substitute.
Substitute.
Okay, I know we always have this problem. I got it.
Right. Now we have to actually vote on the motion itself.
Right.
We need to everyone's clear on this, what this motion says. Okay, all in favor? Please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Thank you very much. So we will see that issue again on in a couple of weeks. All right, thank you. Thank you, Will, for your presentation. Thank you, Renee. Thank you for everyone's input. And with that, we are ready to go on to our second item of business, which is short-term rentals. Manager?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to just allow Lydia to walk through what she sent in the agenda item and see where this conversation goes.
Thank you. So Lydia with Building and Permit Services. And as you know, we've been before you a number of times since last September when Council first requested a discussion on short-term rentals. Most recently, we were here on June 15th for a public hearing on an ordinance regarding requiring short-term rentals to obtain a business license, as Council directed us in May. 27 people spoke at the hearing. 7 were in support of the licensing ordinance or some sort of regulation. The remaining 20 spoke against requiring a license. Several who spoke against the licensing requirement indicated that they would be in favor instead of registration. Prior to the hearing, Council received 35 emails regarding short-term rentals. 6 of these were relatively neutral, indicating general support for short-term rentals, but asking for some simple regulations. Emails from 18 people expressed concerns, mainly with regards to non-owner occupied short-term rentals and or their impact on housing supply. And many of those called for limiting the concentration of short-term rentals, including a recommendation for a 1,000-foot separation. Many of these people also requested a local contact number be provided so neighbors could contact someone if an issue arose during the stay. The remaining emails were from people who are against the proposed licensing requirement. Since publication of the agenda item summary for tonight's work sessions, 42 emails were submitted. And I would like to say that 40 of those were there were very similar message from short-term rental operators requesting protection for short-term rentals. I believe we received a lot more than 40, probably 50. I was just trying to release them from quarantine, but they were all the same message requesting protection. We also received email in support of short-term rentals, and they noted that those pay transient room tax. And then we received one message from a person indicating that short-term rentals threaten neighborhoods and negatively impact the housing stock. So the main reason staff brought forward an ordinance for a license was because Council specified in the motion in May that they wanted an enforcement mechanism attached to the regulation. Licensing provides authorization to conduct a specific activity, and it can be denied or revoked based on certain conduct. Licenses typically have ongoing obligations, either in the form of license conditions and an annual license requirement. And submission of data can be an ongoing requirement of a license, and all those were included in the ordinance we brought before you in June. Registration, on the other hand, is typically a one-time event. Data is limited to information regarding contact numbers and information on the owner, operator, and the short-term rental unit itself. Registration does not typically have associated conditions or terms except keeping the registration up to date, and it does not include an enforcement mechanism. Regardless of whether short-term rentals are licensed or registered, they still must comply with the codes we have in effect. And these rules include regulations around noise, limitations on the number of people who can stay per visit, and compliance with parking rules, etc. As one example, the Eugene Police Department responded to over 700 noise complaints last year, but these were for any number of different housing types and were by no means limited to short-term rentals. One of the issues that's constantly being raised regarding the questions of regulating short-term rentals is that the city does not have accurate data, and this is correct. We do not know how many there are in Eugene or the percentage that are owner occupied. We also don't have a means to correlate which of the complaints received are related to short-term rentals as opposed to other rentals or housing types. Both registration and licensing would allow the city to collect data and to better understand what the issues are before drafting any regulations regarding short-term rentals. If the council is still interested in a licensing requirement with an enforcement mechanism that includes the ability to revoke short-term rental licensings for repeated verified violations and wants to require they provide information to the city regarding number of stays, etc., we recommend option 1, which would direct the city manager to return to council for action on the ordinance heard on June 15th requiring short-term rentals obtain a business license. If the council is interested in a softer approach and wants to require a local contact number and to collect data regarding the location of short-term rentals, allowing staff to correlate the short-term rental location with code compliance to determine what complaints are associated specifically with short-term rentals, we recommend option 2, which directs the city manager to revise the June 15th ordinance to require short-term rentals to register and provide a local contact number. And then we would return to council on action on the revised ordinance. That would not require another public hearing. So that concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for that very succinct description of the difference. That was helpful. I have Mike and Betty and then Alan.
Thank you, Mary, and Greg there too, I think, yeah. My recollection of testimony was we had one complaint from short-term rentals that was identifiable, and I understood your presentation at the end. Thank you very much regarding the inability to make direct correlations if somebody doesn't say so, but from what we had heard from testimony, that's what I recall. I may be, depending on what my colleagues want to do, convinced to go with option 2 with the registration, but I saw this as a solution in search of a problem. So I'm not even necessarily convinced that we would require a license of this business type when we require a license of nearly no other kind of business in Eugene. Especially when we have ordinance in place to deal with all the negative effects that anyone has complained about. So, thank you.
Okay, Betty and then Alan.
Thank you. Much as I hate to disagree with Mike, I do. I was hoping for the ordinance which was presented to us a few months ago. I had asked for language about substituting that ordinance, but I didn't get it yet.
Yeah,
but,
and Councilor Taylor, I'll jump in. I apologize. I have that language for you. It didn't. I had some issues with my computer. I apologize. I thought I had sent that to you. When you're ready, I have that motion language. If that is what you want.
Okay, thank you. After the motion's made, then I would like to have that. But thank you. And I wanted to read a couple of this. This is the time to take care of this is before there are serious problems, not after. We have lots of examples of places who've had serious problems with short-term rentals for a lot of reasons, and it makes sense to foresee something instead of doing something after it happens. And the only thing that's wrong is not neighborhood disturbance. It is also, I wanted to say that it doesn't matter how many people wrote us to say protect short-term rentals. There are people who have a financial reason to say it. Most of them don't. Some of them don't realize that if they're just renting rooms in their house, we're not doing anything. We're not trying to stop them from doing that. Some people got frightened that they were not able to rent a room or two, and we haven't ever discussed that. But I think that we need to protect neighborhoods and protect our housing stock. And I just wanted to read a couple of sentences from this letter from Christine Sunt, this isn't the only one I've gotten. I've gotten some in the past, but I don't have copies right now. A neighborhood is successful with residents, whether owners of property or long-term renters, know one another and work together for the common good. And that means that you don't know the neighbors who are renting short-term rentals. Another sentence, by allowing property investors who may not even live in the city to rent space to outsiders who have no reason or purpose to engage as part of a community, the neighborhood cohesion is threatened and ultimately lost. And then one more sentence, we need housing that does not discriminate against those who need permanent and convenient local and affordable living spaces, but who find those housing options quickly vanishing because they've been turned into privileged transient housing, better known as short-term rentals. And I think there are those two main reasons to protect neighborhood livability and to protect the housing stock. And to have outsiders, whether they're outsiders or not, people who don't live there renting, it doesn't do any good to have a place where you can contact someone. They just shouldn't be. There shouldn't be. And the first ordinance that we saw did have provisions for giving people time to either sell their property or do something else with it. And it's mainly, I want to stop people from buying or building houses for that purpose. Thank you.
Okay, and Greg.
Thank you, Mayor. If you recall, this issue didn't kind of just pop out of thin air. It actually arose because of the complaints and the frustration for the lack of accountability for problems with short-term rentals. That's where this issue came from. Despite the claims to the contrary, there are numerous other cities in Oregon that have already regulated short-term rentals. We're very late to the game, as it turns out, and what they are doing goes well beyond what we're even considering. They've done owner occupancy requirements, separation between short-term rentals, parking requirements, inspections, limiting the number of days. None of those are what we're talking about here. The issues and problems that we see and other cities have seen are real. That's why all of these other jurisdictions, Bend, Portland, Ashland, Salem, have all acted before us to deal with this issue. So I think that the business license and accountability mechanism is quite modest action. It's a minimum, I think. It's not draconian by any stretch of the imagination, and it's not an undue burden on the businesses. So I would encourage everyone to support option number one and require a business license so we can get an accountability mechanism with a very modest fee.
Okay, Greg and then Claire.
I have to differ with Adam on this one.
Greg,
Simple registration.
Greg, your sound is not coming. Greg, we cannot hear you. We cannot understand you. I'm sorry. Your sound is not. Well, we can hear you, but we can't understand. No, it's. You have.
Okay, let me look closer.
He's pulling a max headroom.
Okay.
Slow bandwidth.
Yeah, that dates you, Claire.
No, that's still not right.
Can you phone in?
Yeah, Greg, I wonder if you want to phone in.
I don't know how to fix it right now.
Okay. Councilor Evans, we can try one of two things.
Yeah. I don't know how to fix it.
No.
Okay, Jessica, what were you going to suggest?
And Claire, you go on floating at 80 stuff. It's awesome.
Go ahead. Keep moving. Don't worry about that.
Councilor Evans, I would suggest you disconnect and maybe.
There's a lag too.
I have muted him and it is still going.
He's still got Greg.
It's because there's a time lag.
Yeah, Greg, I'm going to ask you to mute and then try and call in instead, and I'll go to the next counselor in the queue, and we'll come back to you when you have a clear connection, okay? And Jessica can make sure she pulls you in. All right, so we'll go to Claire and Chris.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to note, the emails that we received, they all had the same subject line, but when you open them up, they actually all had very individual stories and remarks about why they supported this type of business. And sure, they were mostly from people who have a financial interest. That's fine. We're considering a regulation around their business. But I think it was important to note, it allows them to stay in their home, it supplements their income, and they also noted the ways short-term rentals benefit the community. They promote local businesses, they employ people in some cases to take care of turn the rental over. And they provide a type of housing that can't be provided by either hotels or longer-term rentals. So we've heard about people staying in them while they were in the process of moving here and buying a home. People who have been displaced from their home for some reason, who live here in Eugene, people who've come here to receive medical treatment, and traveler nurses who've come to provide medical treatment. And I really think to refer to people like that as outsiders is a really kind of awful rhetoric. These are people who might be my relatives coming to visit me, and to have someone refer to them as an outsider, I think, is not the kind of welcoming community that Eugene likes to think of itself as. So I just needed to react to that. I think a registration program is a very reasonable thing for us to set up. It would allow us to gather data that we can trust and understand the impact of these businesses. And I support having a requirement for a local contact to be available to respond to any immediate needs, any immediate issues. For me, if we do that, if we get a registration system, then, after we've collected some of that data, I'd be more willing to look at the idea of limiting how many rentals we have, whether that's in a particular location or overall. And think about what other things we might need to do if we actually do see some impact or a real growth in this part of the industry, which I don't think we're going to be seeing probably for the next year at least. So those are my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Okay, Chris.
Thank you. I remember when we were kind of beginning to start into this conversation, and this is actually something that Lydia mentioned also, was the fact that we didn't have a lot of reliable information. We had a lot of anecdotal information, we had a lot of opinions, we had a lot of versions, and that was not really helpful, at least for me, to try to come up with a practical series of steps based on what somebody thinks is happening, what somebody believes is happening, opinions, anecdotes, whatever. And so the notion of having a registry was felt to be the first step, not the only step, to begin to collect information that we could then analyze and figure what additional steps we might need to put into place. And so the notion of going right into a licensing conversation, to me, is, well, we don't have the information to know whether we really need to have a licensing requirement. I'm fine with registering. I'm fine with collecting the data that we can then use to make additional decisions. But kind of this licensing thing kind of tacked on halfway through the conversation. And it was like, well, I don't need licensing at this point. I just need data. I want to know more about it. And I think part of it is coming from, a notion that we need to get ahead of a problem. It's like pre-crime. Well, we need to make sure that the outsiders don't come in and destroy my neighborhood before they've even come in and destroyed my neighborhood, because I assume they will. It's that whole expectation argument. And I appreciate that in Ward 3, let's say, they have had more problems than other areas. I get that. And I would absolutely understand that because of the nature of some of the demographics there and the nature of some of the rentals there, that would be a real problem hotspot. But that's not necessarily all of Eugene. It's not necessarily in my area. I don't see the need to move to a pre-crime status when I don't have the data yet to know what's really going on. So I would support option one, which is the registry. Let's get some information. Let's decide what we know and what we don't know. And then we can move to additional steps. I'm absolutely open to doing that, but I want to do it with data in hand, not a lot of assumptions, anecdotes, and fears.
Okay.
Councillor Evans is back with us.
Oh, good. Jennifer, I'm going to let him go first. Okay, Greg, go for it.
Yeah, I think my daughter got fixed.
No, no, Councillor, we don't have it fixed. Can you possibly turn off your video? No. Video, and we'll just do audio only.
Who turned that?
Maybe if you check that caret like
What?
symbol, it would tell you.
Can you hear me now?
That's better. That's better. Yeah.
I'm doing audio.
Councillor, unfortunately, it's not going to work out. I think we might have to have you call in over the phone.
Can you hear me?
No, I don't think it's going to work.
Can you hear me?
No, we really can't make out what you're saying. I can send you the phone number if you would like to call in on the phone.
Yeah. What?
Okay. Okay.
Okay, I will.
Thank you, Jessica.
Text me the number.
Okay. We'll talk to you soon, Greg. Okay. Jennifer, let's jump in here.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was going to essentially say what Chris said. I think I did have a couple of questions for Lydia. With the registration system, is the thought to keep track of whether people have an owner occupied one or a non-owner occupied one? Would that be part of the questions?
I believe we can ask that as a question as part of the registration, whether it's an owner occupied or not. So yes.
Yeah, because it seems like what we're really concerned about is the non-owner occupied one. So it'd be nice to be able to have some kind of, like when we're, especially like how many are we talking about, we could filter them out that way. I'd be interested in seeing that. And I also want to echo having a local contact, I think would be very important for this. Obviously, that would solve some other of the enforcement problems perhaps as well. My other question was, with the registration system, I assume that if someone chooses not to register, there's not much we can do about it.
I mean, we could, it doesn't have the same teeth as the revoking the license, but we could write in the ordinance that it's a requirement to have a registration, so that if we find out there isn't a registration, we can go forward and have our code compliance staff indicate that they have to register in order to continue to operate.
Okay, well that would make sense. Just, I mean, I would hope everyone would get the message and register, but just in case we need, like I think of other people were saying that we've been frustrated by not having the data we wish we had. And so we want to get that as accurate of data at the end of this period as possible. And so we really need people to be willing to register and to participate in order to do that. And
I will say that, sorry, I just wanted to say that most of the owner operators have indicated that they are willing to register. So I think that they could help us with getting that message out.
Well, that's fantastic. So I would also be comfortable doing this, starting with this and seeing, what the data really says before we do anything more that could be more impactful on people's businesses. So I'm comfortable with whichever option that was that is registration and not option 2.
Okay, I have a, let's see, Emily, take it away.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Is there any fee to register? Or are we gonna have to pay admin costs for that?
We don't have a fee associated with that proposed. It would be a pretty small cost. So I think we could absorb that in our compliance program.
Okay, I don't want it to keep people from registering, but with money gonna be super duper tight, I would, put in $5-10 if that would make a difference. But okay, if it doesn't, it doesn't. Thank you.
I have one other question, and then I'm hoping that Greg will get his chance here. So with you mentioned in the AIS that with the registration, it's typically a one-time thing, but could we write this so that it's a renewal? So we get updated information if this becomes the key mechanism. Can we have a renewal process there?
I'm going to have to defer to Catherine on that. My understanding is that it's a one-time thing, but Catherine, would we be able to require an annual registration?
We could. What was being discussed in some of the testimony was a singular registration, which is why the assumption is it would be a one-time thing. But if you wrote your code to say you have to register annually, and at that time update any information that we have, including the contact, you could have a code provision that is stated that way.
That seems like that would ensure more reliable data. The other question I had, and I think we probably solve this if we go in the direction of the registration. We had a lot of testimony about a court case in New York, and it wasn't certain kinds of data collection were found to be not allowable. Is that true? Are there restrictions about what kind of data we could ask for?
Those were cases that involved getting data directly from Airbnb. And so what we're talking about here is collecting essentially anonymous type data from the operators themselves. So those court cases that were being discussed really were not related to the type of either licensing or registration that you're discussing here tonight.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Because the other thing that would be interesting that it's not clear to me that we would get this through the registration process is to actually understand how active these are, because that was the other question of someone may have a short-term rental, but it's not super active. Others might be active all the time. Can we with the registration process, I'm assuming we would not get that kind of information. We would just know whether they were at some points during the year using it as a short-term rental.
That's correct. The registration would be kind of the information provided on the registration form, and then making it, let's say, annual would just simply be to update. Is it still owner occupied? Is this still the right contact number? So that kind of real-time information that you're talking about, how many times is it being used and all of that, that was built into the licensing ordinance that the public has.
So if we decide we need that and council comes back, they have the option of getting that, drill down a little more in the information. Okay,
definitely make it an iterative process.
Do we have Greg on the phone?
We do.
Can you hear me now?
Much better. Yes, thank you.
Okay. So I should. Oh God! Wait, hold up. Let me get out of this.
Where the hell don't you call?
Where did that come from? Jeez.
Okay. Am I okay? I'm not having the echo effect.
You're good.
you know, the way that I see this is this is an enforcement issue. We have ordinances on the books that address, you know, people with bad behavior, and you know, this is what this really all stems from. I think it's a good idea for us to collect the data so that we know where our folks are, and also to be able to look at trends in the data, see what, you know, is coming out of the data. I think that doing a licensure piece is a little bit of overkill. But, you know, we have ordinances placed like the social host ordinance, as well as nuisance ordinances that, if they're enforced vigorously,
I think his call dropped.
We lost you again, Greg.
Not Greg's night.
I will try to get him back on.
Okay, we'll just, let's see, it looks like I've got Claire and Alan. So Claire,
You're doing great, Jessica.
why don't I bump over to you, Claire?
Thank you. I wonder if in our council budget, we can help individual counselors improve their Wi-Fi so they can join meetings without interruptions. So some of the questions that came up made me realize that I'm not clear exactly on what data, what the registration would ask of the short-term rental provider. So I'd be curious to hear, besides, you know, their information, the information of their contact, you know, is it a whole house? Is it a room? Is it owner occupied? Is there other things that you're considering asking on that registration?
Those were the main components that we were considering. A big piece of this is having the addresses of the short-term rentals again, so that we can correlate it with our code compliance system, because that really has been a sticking point. What are the complaints that we're receiving specific to short-term rentals? So I think that would be very helpful. But like I said, we could ask for static data. So all of the things that you listed, is it owner occupied? You know, are you renting a part of your house? We might even be able to get some information if they want to provide that up front in terms of how many times a year do you guesstimate that you're renting it. But the piece that we had with the license was that the owner operators were going to keep a registry and provide that data on how many nights and how many people per stay. And so that piece would not be included in the registration.
Thank you. Yeah, and I at this point, I'm not really interested in how many people are staying. I believe that hotels and motels are required to keep a guest registry, which can be requested by law enforcement or others for cause, but they're not automatically offering it up to some regulatory agency. And so that really didn't jibe well with me, to be asking the short-term rental owners to give that information, you know, on a regular basis. I didn't see the point of that, and I didn't think it was fair. So I appreciate your answer, Lydia. Thank you.
There, Councillor Evans is on the line again.
Great. Okay, Greg, take it away.
did you? Okay. Make this really quick, because this might kick me off again. You know, I'm not in favor of an ordinance. I think that a simple registry would work for this purpose. But originally, you know, we started looking at this issue because of, you know, parties that are out of control, too many people at specific residence at a time, all of which I think that we can handle through enforcement. I don't think that we really need to enact an ordinance to address these issues, but we do need to have more vigorous enforcement in terms of what's going on and what's being reported, to the police as nuisance or problem sites, problem locations.
Okay, great. And let's see, now I have Alan and then Betty.
So if I got this right, the registry is purely voluntary. There's no way to compel people to do it. How are we actually going to tell if people don't register? We're just going to know who registered.
Well, there's a couple of ways. I mean, one obviously is we can, if there are complaints, then we can follow up on those. We also can have staff, and this is a little bit difficult, but we can review the Airbnb sites, VRBO, and try and correlate if there are certain addresses in a neighborhood. We can try and do some follow-up there. Again, that doesn't provide us going on there. What we would have to do is actually sign up for an evening in order to be able to get the specific addresses. So that would be pretty staff intensive. So we could do some of that in terms of trying to gather that data. We do some of that with regards to our rental housing code, where we have staff, looking to see if there are places that are advertised that aren't actually licensed.
So, but that's not the plan right now. It's just a voluntary registration. And that is very staff intensive. We are going to have a lot of things that we're going to be doing. This isn't going to be one thing that floats to the top. So is there going to be a deadline for the registration or sign up period? This looks more like, and I guess I wasn't clear about the data that's being collected. This looks more like a one-time survey of whether or not you're owner occupied and some modest other information.
Well, right, owner occupied, what the address is, as I said, that can allow us to correlate with the code compliance system. As Catherine indicated, we can ask them to do an annual registration. So we write that into the ordinance, we can update it annually. And again, we would reach out to the owners, short-term rental owners who have been, we have a good database of who those people are through this process, and we would reach out to them to ask for their assistance in terms of getting those other places registered.
Yeah. So I guess I can count the numbers, but the information we're going to collect is not going to be very useful to us down the road. And if someone doesn't want to register, there's nothing we could do. Even if we say, hey, there's a code that you're supposed to register, we're not going to fine them into registering. So it's actually just a voluntary thing. So we're going to get a very limited number. The people who are not problematic are the ones that are going to register. They're people who are already doing the rules. So, and just to be perfectly clear, the lack of enforcement and accountability is what led us here. So to say that we already have all these things going on, all these mechanisms, is why this issue came up in the first place, because they don't really work. And so just to be so perfectly clear, nothing's changing here. It's basically status quo with a voluntary registration with data that we'll see what we get.
Okay, Betty and then Emily.
Thank you. I see how this is not going to go well, but I didn't expect this kind of turnout, this kind of result. Actually, my main concern is not code compliance. That's important, but what short-term rentals have done to other cities. And I don't know why we have to wait till there's a big problem here. We should be able to learn from the experiences of other cities. And I think I'm the first one who brought this up. Maybe somebody did before that, but from the League of Oregon Cities, I learned about cities in Oregon that have had terrible problems because of short-term rentals. And it's mainly because of what happens to their housing, to our housing supply. And we don't have to wait till it happens here to do something to prevent it. Time we should prevent something. It's something we do over and over. We wait till there's a huge homeless problem, then we say we have to do something. And I think we should think about things before they become dire things. Hood River, Oregon wasn't mentioned by Ellen, but there are other cities that's one where they had terrific problems, and they do have regulations now. And there are cities all over the world that have had problems. I brought one place to your attention last year. It was Barcelona, but there have been other places since then that there have been big articles about what short-term rentals have done to cities. And it turns them into not neighborhoods, but hotels scattered about. And to someone who said anyone can have a home business, well, that would be the ones who are living there and renting out. It's not a home business if you buy a house or build a house in just to rent it out and have a business in neighborhoods. And I am very disappointed with how this is going, but I can see how it's going. Thank you.
Okay, I have two more counselors wanting to speak. I'm hoping we can do that quickly, maybe three, because it's almost 7 o'clock and we have a long night ahead of us. I want to make sure you have a break. So, Emily, Claire, and Mike, but if you can each make it pretty quick, that would be great.
Yes, when we get some data from the taxes that we collect, the lodging taxes, and I was hearing earlier in previous dates that there was all this data from the online registrations, and I wasn't, under the impression that it was going to take a lot of city time to coordinate that. So that would be interesting to know. And life is changing like crazy. So the things that we were concerned about and are still concerned about may be different. I would be surprised if out of town, state people were buying property for this, because there's no games. We're not supposed to travel. Who's going to come right now? So a yearly registration might help that. If they decide not to register, does that mean they've also decided not to pay taxes? How do we keep track of that? And if we do this and they register, we could give them a really nice sticker to put on their front window that they're compliant and love Eugene. We'll put hearts on it. Thank you.
Okay, Claire, and then Mike.
Thanks. Yeah, I love that idea, Emily, of the sticker. I was going to ask on that question of the non-registration. I recall hearing at some point something about Airbnb, having some ability that if we said to them, hey, this is an unregistered Airbnb, you should be listing them if they are responsive to that in any way. Someone told me that there was a mechanism for Airbnb to say, hey, you're not complying with your local jurisdiction. You can't be listed on us until you do.
That's correct. We can work with Airbnb. I would suggest that if you're interested in adopting this registration, and then give staff some time to work with the Airbnb and VRBO. They are cover most of the short-term rentals. But in other cities, they have agreed to do that, where they would not allow somebody to put their short-term rental on their platform without the registration. So I think that is something we can definitely work on and then bring back to you at a later date.
Okay, great. And finally, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. Not to highlight a disagreement with Patty for any reason at all, but I would say that other cities that have had issues, I don't have that concern, because in many of those cities, they don't have the high housing cost that we do here. It's considerably less profitable to do this here on a massive scale than it is in other cities. So I don't have a concern that these will be popping up everywhere. Thank you.
Okay, Emily, I'm going to ask you to put a motion on the table.
Is there any again with the music? Okay. Is there any answer to the tax paying? Do they, what if they don't pay taxes? They don't exist. Do we know about that?
Unfortunately, the paying of the taxes is really separate from this registration process, because their taxes are paid Airbnb actually pays us the taxes. When people go on to the platforms, everybody in Eugene has the platforms pay us the tax. So we actually don't have, that's part of the reason we don't have the data, because Airbnb doesn't provide that information to us. So we won't actually be able to correlate those things, because that data really goes into a black hole. So people are required to pay the TRT in order to be listed on those websites. So I don't think we'll have a problem with paying the taxes, but it's not going to be connected to the registration program.
Okay, thanks. I'll make the motion, but Alan was raising his hand.
Yeah, I was just going to comment that City of Portland did an analysis of the taxes being paid by the percentage of Airbnbs in it, and short-term rentals, not Airbnbs, but and they said they thought it was like, I can't remember, Lydia, do you have that on top of your head? I think it was 29% of the people were paying the tax, something like that. It was abysmally low.
Right.
And so that's not a mechanism at all.
Well, when I talked with the finance people, they said that because all of the short-term rentals pay their taxes directly through Airbnb, that our compliance rate is much higher. So again, I'm not quite sure how that data was collected in Portland, but our finance folks think that we have a pretty high compliance rate.
Yeah, and not everybody's on Airbnb.
I want to cut this to a close. I want to bring this to a close. Emily, will you put a motion on the table?
I will. I move to direct the city manager to revise the June 15th, 2020 ordinance to require short-term rentals to register annually and provide local contact information, and return to council for action on this revised ordinance.
Second.
Okay. Betty, comment?
Is Greg connected?
Yeah, and Betty has waved her hand, so I just am checking to see, did she, Betty, want to comment?
Mute. I moved to substitute the other option. I wanted to substitute the previous ordinance, but I can see that doesn't have a chance. But I moved to substitute the first motion on our agenda, which says require license.
Do I have a second? Okay, I'm not seeing a second, Betty.
Okay, we're doing nothing.
Okay, we're back to the original motion. All in favor, please raise your hands, and Greg, please say aye if you want to say aye. All in favor. 1, 2, 3, 4. Greg?
Aye.
5. All opposed? 1, 2. Betty, are you opposing? Oh, 3. Okay, so it passes. Thank you very much. Good conversation, and I'll see you back here in 26 minutes. Have a good break.
Thank you.